Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. In 2 weeks, Vancouver welcomes the world as one of the 16 host cities in North America for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. According to the Federal Parliamentary Budget Office, it will cost governments across Canada, that's federal, provincial, and municipal, $82 million per game. Will the World Cup transform Vancouver or simply disrupt it at an enormous cost? Here to discuss is the director of Simon Fraser University's City Program, the Duke of Data, Andy Yan, and a prominent voice on housing, social policy, and community building, the executive director of First United, Amanda Burrows. Amanda, Andy, thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Amanda, let's start with you. Vancouver's hosting 7 matches for this World Cup. Who is this for?
Well, I don't really feel like it's for locals. I mean, right now it feels like it's almost for the ultra wealthy, like the Epstein class.
Wow, okay, we're throwing that out there.
Corporate sponsors, it really feels like it's an affordability issue. And right now when Vancouver is so strapped with affordability, this just feels like one more thing we can't afford. And actually, I think that's really why what's happening in New York City right now is resonating with New Yorkers. So Danny, he just launched this really cool idea to make a lottery to get World Cup tickets. And really as a pushback, as the price gouging of what has been happening with the World Cup, to, so the residents can participate. And I think he's even doing something around a cultural passport. So to encourage you to go to the different neighborhoods or boroughs to be culturally engaged. And so I really think he's hitting on something important. We don't just want to consume the games. We want the city to participate. And meanwhile, let's underscore what's happening in Vancouver locally is the BC Sports Hall of Fame is being shuttered during this time. This is, local stories, local sports, in the backdrop of a global event, really, I think underscores that this doesn't really feel like something for locals when we're shutting out local voices and participation.
Andy, who benefits economically from this? Is it the Epstein class, as Amanda just alluded to?
Well, I think it brings a certain lens towards how these events are pitched versus what actually happens. I think that if you look at, say, a lot of the academic studies that go over these mega events, really how much they cost and what they deliver, you actually find that in one way, a lot of times there's a lot of overpromising, and what happens also is concentration, that it doesn't necessarily flow into the local economy, but actually concentrates on a few particular businesses and a few.
What kind of businesses?
Well, the ones that are sponsor approved. That you have to remember. Well, you have to remember that part of the deal is actually this heavily curated set of services and providers for, in this case, FIFA. And the issue of all these promises of how this brings in a tremendous amount of economic activity for the hosts actually is kind of problematic. I mean, you actually saw it in the Olympics towards all the promises of all these new customers that they ended up to be just heavily concentrated within the site, as well as just within a few specific providers. And I think that this is really, an interesting element towards the promises versus the delivery.
So Ken Sim said that this was going to be 30 or 40 Super Bowls. Aren't businesses in the area in downtown Vancouver going to have an economic boom in the month that the World Cup is here?
Well, I think that that's really what's coming down is they don't seem to be. That I think you're also talking about a time that's typically one of the highest seasons anyways in Vancouver. Right. That, this is the kind of interesting measure in that will it be 30 to 40 Super Bowls worth of economic activity, or will this actually displace or even reduce the kind of convention or cruise ship tourist kind of activity that normally comes into Vancouver at this time? So I think that this is a really interesting kind of question. And I think we'll see as this kind of rolls out really what will actually happen because of the kind of agreements, the kind of corporate agreements between FIFA and the city of Vancouver. It's really going to actually exclude a whole bunch of economic activities and festivals, one should add, that would have ordinarily happened anyways.
Okay, so going back to locals, Expo 86 brought us a lot of infrastructure. BC Place, a SkyTrain line, Science World. The Olympics brought us a lot of infrastructure in terms of upgrading the Sea to Sky Highway, the Richmond Oval. I don't feel like there's any legacy infrastructure that's being created for this global event. Is that weird?
I think that it's really, really illustrative of really the nature of this event. It's actually kind of short. You think about, the Olympics was 2 weeks, but then at the same time, the run up, the kind of sizable investment in infrastructure that is lasting, that really kind of left that legacy through which doesn't seem to be happening with FIFA. Like, it seems that there's certainly been some investments. I think there's something like $150 million being put into BC Place again, and then not much else. I mean, smaller kind of investments throughout the region when it comes to, say, practice fields, but nothing on the scale of either the Olympics or certainly Expo.
Amanda, we're not getting a SkyTrain line. We're not getting a new stadium of any sort. We're not getting new infrastructure at all. Do Vancouverites feel ownership over this event? Like, are we even excited that FIFA World Cup is coming to our city?
No, I don't think so. I mean, and let's also be clear and not totally romanticize Expo and the Olympics before. It did create some displacement and skyrocketing real estate. And yet there was an electricity. Like, I moved here just before the Olympics, and there was people had so much pride in Vancouver, and, people were romping around in the red mittens everywhere, but there's nothing equivalent to that. And so I don't know if people are just in denial about the World Cup or disinterested, but frankly, I think it does come down to two very specific things. One being affordability, as mentioned. It just feels so out of reach for the regular Vancouverite to access. And the second, I think, has to do with credibility of FIFA. I mean, this is an organization with a lot of baggage,
to say the least.
A lot of scandals, human rights infringements, and there's such a hyper commercialization of these games that honestly, like, can we even talk about them right here and right now? And I think those things around affordability and credibility is really undermining our connection, our emotional connection to these games, because we must know that Vancouver loves soccer. Like, look at our passion trying to save the Whitecaps.
Absolutely.
So there's this other tension here, and I think it has to do with those other things.
You're on the ground, close to that neighborhood near the stadium itself. What concerns you about these games?
Well, yeah, I live actually right around the corner too. What concerns me is just the hyper awareness and requirements of a host city and what we're required to do in the beautification, in the radius, with the branding. And so when it comes to especially human rights infringement, that's absolutely what concerns me. Absolutely.
What kind of human rights infringements are we talking about?
Well, we know historically with FIFA, they have a track record of infringing upon human rights, which has now led to host cities required to have these human rights action plans. So Vancouver has developed one. It's actually being released this week. And what Vancouver has done in the draft that was woefully lacking is like real tangibles. It was like a plan to make a plan. And we really need to know what the implementation is.
But it's happening right now. Like, it's
going to
happen in a couple
right
weeks.
now.
Yeah.
It's happening in a couple of weeks. And there still are some unknowns. There's some movements towards, recognizing that human rights infringements might happen. And especially when it comes to our unhoused population, the downtown east side, like, where are we responding? And there's this expression called the public realm management, a fancy way of saying bylaw compliance, which then leads to enforcement. So will there be more street sweeps, which means will unhoused folks' belongings be taken? Will that escalate? Will those harms escalate like we saw?
Where will unhoused people go during that time?
Where do unhoused people go exactly?
If they're being moved from certain areas.
And
so do we not know?
Well, right now the city is in conversations with expanding drop-in spaces, respite, having more outreach workers be able to give some information to people who are unhoused and vulnerable populations. So it sounds like there's movement. I'm unclear still where those places are and how it's being implemented. I am hopeful. I want to be a good partner in this, but there still is a lot of unknowns.
Seems concerning since the games are just 2 weeks away. Andy, is this the tension that always exists with hosting a global event, that you're presenting yourself to the world, you're wearing your best Sunday shoes, and you're kind of patching over or trying to hide the true social realities of your city?
I think that that's actually one of the biggest challenges, is that, is this really trying to present that kind of Sunday best, and yet hiding who we really are and the kind of challenges and the city that we've become. And I think that this is really, highlighting, what this really does for the city and who does it really help. And I think that this is really, the kind of ongoing challenge in a place like the city of Vancouver, really going into trying to I think, patch things over as opposed to deal with some of the hard issues that I think we're really trying to face, whether it goes into affordable housing or income inequality. And I think that really highlights just really the state which the city is currently in. I think that a lot of this is, you think about like the sizable amounts of infrastructure that did come out through Expo and the Olympics, really what will be the legacy of FIFA. And I think the interesting thing is that it seems to be largely around vibes. and really, is this an investment in the vibe economy? And really, what is it worth the kind of well, it's going to be probably over $500 million worth of vibe improvement, and is that really the best kind of best way of spending over $500 million?
Well, vibes are very temporary. Amanda, we have about a minute left here. Once the last match is played, once we've taken down the decorations, what do you hope is left out of the World Cup for Vancouver?
What do I hope is left? Well, I hope we're actually left with, being proud of Vancouver, frankly. I hope that Vancouver learns some lessons about itself. I mean, this sport is, soccer. It calls itself the beautiful game. And at its best, it's beautiful because it connects different cultures and income levels and generations together and creates sense of belonging, right? That's beautiful. But, how does that extend to the values of a city? And so when the World Cup leaves, I hope we are left with not just memories of how beautiful the city was, but we're left with how beautiful we treat each other, not just during world events when the world is watching, but when the world isn't watching. That's my hope.
Are we left with a bad taste in our mouths if the Whitecaps end up leaving right after the World Cup?
It would be a little bit ironic, but then I think when we talk about, say, the legacy of mega events in Vancouver and really the kind of sizable hardware that was brought into the city of Vancouver with Expo and the Olympics, I mean, let's face it, is that it looks like FIFA is most likely going to be maybe a small software upgrade, and I'm just hoping it doesn't brick the city. So I think this is really something to watch in terms of this really being that kind of small software patch compared to the major hardware that the Olympics and Expo brought into the region.
Well, Andy, Amanda, thanks so much for your time tonight and your insights.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Folks, that was the Duke of Data, Andy Yan, and the Executive Director of First United, Amanda Burrows. Now, after some business, speaking of big promises, grand visions, and whether anything actually gets built, there seems to be a lot of urgency to get things done in the province, but not a lot of action. I'm going to take a moment up next.